I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Doni and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
my head up.
I'm from South Carolina, so I just...
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Mars?
Oh, my heart,
Happy 20th anniversary.
my heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? Doni.
And dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself. There's
The doctor lived next door to the janitor, to the reverend, and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Doni, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it all the more.
letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
First name's Doni, last name's Glover. In it to win it for the long haul, baby. All right, so it's October 17th in 2023, the year of our Lord. And that means in another month or so, a month and a week, it'll be Thanksgiving. Can you believe it? This year just flew by. Nonetheless, if you're from Baltimore, then you know that the Big Daddy dinner is a very important part of our history here, our tradition, at least over the past 40 some years. And here to discuss Thanksgiving and turkeys and pumpkin pies is Aaron Maybin. Good morning, Mr. Maybin.
Good morning. Good morning. How you doing today, good brother?
I'm good, sir. Well, actually, we're not here to talk about pumpkin pie and sweet potato pie. You like sweet potato pie?
Nah, I don't go in for sweets that often. I do enjoy it, but I just try to stay away from it.
Okay, you're such the athlete. Well, we really going to talk. We really want to talk about the Big Daddy Center, and it's been brought to our attention, thanks to Mr. Maybin and others, that the Big Daddy dinner, a staple here in the city of Baltimore, got a notification that they had 6 weeks to find a location. Is that right, Mr. Maybin?
That's correct.
How did it make you feel?
I mean, I was upset as many people are. I think that anybody that is from the city of Baltimore, especially if you're black in Baltimore, at some point you've had to lean on the Big Daddy family for their service, you know, for their resources, for their food, for all of the amazing things that they do in our community. So the thought and the idea of them not being able to do their Thanksgiving food drive is unheard of. So obviously, you know, the first thing that I usually think about in times like that is what can we do? You know, I'm always trying to be solution oriented about things. So when I saw the APB get put out, I just reached out and tried to see, you know, how I could try to help connect some dots. Because
it just doesn't fit. I think in algebra, they say it's incongruent. Something, who does that to such a staple? You know, I went to the dinner a think it was year before last. And I noticed, Mr. Maybin, that they had more white and Latino people in the food line than black people. Everybody comes there.
Yeah, this is not just a staple in Black Baltimore. You know, I think that because of the nature of our economic standing in not just the city but the country, we tend to rely very heavily on services like the ones that they provide. But this is not something that is specific to our community. All of our communities here in Baltimore have leaned on Big Daddy and have done so for years. I think they deliver about 50,000 meals during that week. So just try to put your mind around a number that large, you know, 50,000 meals. That's not just Baltimore. That's the surrounding counties. That's, you know, senior citizens, families, senior citizen homes, you know, the whole shebang, you know, and I think that we can't allow organizations and institutions like that are so entrenched in our city and our history here, not to be able to do what they do, especially in times like this.
You know, on top of, so what happened? How about that? What happened?
So it's still ongoing. You know, we definitely have been able to make some good progress, you know, initially after reaching out and finding out exactly where they were at with things, and, you know, just figuring out what the ask was and how, like I said earlier, we could connect dots. You know, I was able to put them in touch with some partners of mine that are going to be able to provide some kitchens and resources for them to prepare the food. And, you know, in terms of a location, we were zoning in on places that were large enough to house such a large undertaking. And thankfully, in the process of us raising a little bit of hell from a communal standpoint, our policymakers have entered the discussion. So, you know, they've started to reach out and offer different resources through the city that, you know, they're gonna have to go back and forth on to see, you know, which location actually makes the most sense, you know. But at the end of the day, that should have been done even before they were informed that they would not be able to use their usual locations, not just the location that they distribute the food, but the location where they prepare the food. 6 weeks out for you to find out that you have to do all of that scrambling. That's a huge undertaking for any organization, especially one that is as dependent on resources and support as they are. So, you know, the fact that now at least our policymakers know how important this is to the community, you know, they decided to step up and make themselves available to do their jobs, essentially. So I'm happy we've at least got movement on that front.
So it was two things. One, the recreation center, Patterson Park, Friends of Patterson Park,
Yes.
well, Patterson Park Recreation Center, they have a HVAC issue.
Mm-hmm.
And
the church across the street, St. Elizabeth's, I believe, is the church that they usually prepare the food. So, you know, it usually every year it's a one-stop shop type operation. You know, they prepare the food across the street, they take it over, and they're able to give it out. And then they have a massive group of volunteers that help them to transport the food all over the city and all over the surrounding counties. So it's a large undertaking, and it's something that has been in place for such a long time, and they got no heads up, they got no warning, they got nothing except for, hey, you know, we're not going to be able to house you guys this year.
You're a strategist. If you're a city elected official and the election is coming up in May, that's not the kind of ball you fumble. I mean, of course, you being a former pro ball player, you don't want to fumble anything.
Well, I mean, in Baltimore, our politicians fumble the ball even more than shoot. The worst running back in the league. Like, you know, that's on par for the course with what we've used to here.
Mr. Maybin, you don't fumble the ball right before election time when it's fresh in people's memories.
Shoot, you're right. I don't, but we ain't talking about me. We talking about our politicians. You want me to answer for them? Shoot, you gotta find a conversation with a different guy. I ain't in nobody's. I'm not in anybody's fan section in that regard.
And then the church just went ghost. The church stopped answering the phone.
I have no idea what they're going through or why, you know what I mean, the communication was what it was. But again, I'm not the type of guy that tries to harp on the why. My whole thing is, what do we do now? How do we figure out a way to make this happen that doesn't require us being dependent on these institutions that have shown that they don't necessarily care about us?
This city is going to hell with gasoline drawers on. You know,
I don't believe that either. I won't abide that conversation any more than I'll abide the conversation that takes the blame off of the people who are actually responsible for those things. I'll say that, yes, we're fighting an uphill battle in just about every category that one can be fought in. Yes, I'll acknowledge that our policymakers are steering the ship directly towards every iceberg they seem to be able to find. But one thing I'm not going to do is ignore or let it go unacknowledged that every single day I wake up, I myself and many other colleagues of mine are the exact changes that I want to see taking place in the city every day. People like Erica Bridgeford, people like Brittany Young, you know, people like the brothers and leaders of A Beautiful Struggle, people like the We Are Us movement, Safe Streets. We're a part of our own rescue already and have been doing so for years. You know, at the end of the day, the people in Baltimore are what make it what it is. Not our elected officials, not our politicians, not our crime rate, not any of the BS that anybody wants to talk to you about us. It's us. We are the capital. We are the change. We are the engine that makes this thing go. And the city is going to go as we go. I'm not waiting on anybody to come save us. I'm not waiting on any superhero to fall out of the sky and fix things for us. If it's not going to happen from the ground up, it's not going to happen. And I ain't got time to be whining and complaining about what's happening. At the end of the day, we got to be working.
Tell me about the rec center that you run, Mr. Maybin.
The Hilton Rec Center is located at 2950 Phelps Lane in West Baltimore. Myself, my partners, Tori Smith and Chanel Smith, his wife, opened this center in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic. This center has historic ties in that community. It, in many ways, is a center that I would have used as a child because I grew up directly adjacent to that community. We opened it in the aftermath of my exit from the school system, but we opened it with the understanding that we needed a space that we controlled, that we operated, and that we could use as a basis of operations for what we do in the city. You know, opening in the middle of a pandemic was definitely a heavy lift. We were blessed to have some amazing benefactors that have come to the table that have really helped us to do what we do and allowed us the freedom to do it our way. It's definitely been an amazing thing to watch take shape because, you know, it started with an idea, you know, and obviously opening up in the middle of a pandemic, you know, we weren't even allowed to have more than 30 people in the building at a time. And, you know, it was frustrating thinking about, you know, how does it even make sense to open up if we are only going to be able to serve, you know, 30 people, such a small number. But, you know, we realized pretty early on that if we couldn't be good stewards of 30, you know what I mean, we didn't deserve 300, you know, so we figured out a formula that really worked in terms of serving and impacting that community, that neighborhood, from the neighborhood association meetings that are housed at our facility to our after school program and our camps and our senior citizens day that we do every Thursday, the community library that we have, all of the great things that we're doing out of that space. We've been blessed to see it grow over that 3-year period. And just recently, this past year, we announced plans for an expansion. We're doing a $25 million expansion of the project that is essentially going to allow us to service not just that entire community, but all of West Baltimore. So it's been a very ambitious lift. I've been blessed to be able to work with, Tori and Chanel and all of the amazing partners that we've brought to the table. And, we're just continuing to do the work every single day.
So many places we could go from here, but Mr. Maybin, how do we get more of our athletes to understand social responsibility? A football game can happen. Parents get very excited, or someone's child gets a scholarship to this college or that college. Or you look at Baltimore, all of the basketball players that have come through here. And you look back at the give back. We're glad these careers prospered. I went to Dunbar, came out in '83. We're glad for the pros, those who went pro. But the give back, when I think of those people who give back, it's almost like a lot of people don't get to that point. Tell me about the give back.
I would respectfully push back against that. One thing I would say about our athletes in general is there's a lot of well-intentioned, well-meaning work that takes place every year by the majority of athletes. I don't think you can name too many athletes that don't have a foundation or a charitable fund or a philanthropic project that they're passionate about. Problem is, none of us know how to serve. That's never something that you're taught in school, the same way nobody teaches you about how to manage your finances, the same way nobody teaches you about how to conduct yourself as a man in the real world. You learn how to be an athlete. You learn how to put a ball in a basket. You learn how to run a football. You learn how to tackle and all of that good stuff. You don't learn how to be a social justice warrior or a change agent. It just so happens that a lot of us come from backgrounds where we are marginalized and disenfranchised. We just don't have a language for it. And it ain't like our schools are teaching our history. You know what I mean? So I would respectfully push back because I see that work taking place. But the thing about it is, when you're an athlete, you think, handing out book bags at the beginning of the school year and, handing out turkeys on Thanksgiving and, giving out presents on Christmas Day. You think that is the work. You think that is your fulfillment of your social contract. And I myself looked at it like that when I first came into the league. It wasn't until I actually, during the off season, got back into my community every year. And I was blessed to have, some key figures around me that actually taught me how to serve, that actually taught me how to go into community, not as a benevolent patriarch, handing out goodwill and good faith and all of that good stuff. But you got to be in it. You got to be one of the people. You know what I mean? Not a leader, but a servant. You know what I mean? A soldier. And, I was blessed to have folks like Keon Carpenter, you know what I mean, in my life that helped teach me that. LeVar Arrington, my manager at the time, who had already been in the league and had already learned all of these things firsthand. Those are the guys that really took me under their wing and taught me what it means to serve community, not just to look like you're doing a good thing, but to actually make sure that the follow-up is there. You can't just come in and do a giveaway and think that that's changing anything. Where's the program? Where's the extended relationship? Where is the follow through? How do we get politically active without being politically informed? I don't want you putting a microphone in front of an athlete's mouth if he doesn't know what he's talking about. You know what I mean? Like, and what time are we really allowing them to nurture that angle? I tell people all the time, if you want to see athletes do better, raise the kids differently. Because I'll say it like this, from a very young age, if you are a talented athlete, I got a coach that I can put you in front of that will teach you how to play. I got trainers I can put you in front of that will teach you how to exercise and train yourself. I can take you to a nutritionist that can teach you how to eat and put the right things in your body to grow. But what if you are a young, aspiring politician, judge, lawyer, change agent? What's the process for that? Who are we taking those kids to? And on top of that, what kids are we celebrating? You know what I mean? Like I can pull up right now a million websites that have rankings and celebrations of kids for their athletic performance. But where are we going to that's saying, hey, these are the smartest kids in Baltimore. These are the kids with the highest scores and the highest achievement. What awards are we bestowing upon them? What internships and scholarships are we setting them up for? What is the equivalent on the left of the Federalist Society? You know what I mean? Like if I'm a young conservative, you know what I'm saying, and I think that my kid has political aspirations, I can send them down to Annapolis, you know what I mean, to learn how to lobby. I can take them down there with this society that will show them how bills get crafted and teach them how to lobby to make sure that they actually get passed. But this is a organization that has absolutely no interest in the empowerment of our community. If anything, they are invested heavily in the destruction of our community. But what's the alternative to that? So as I said, you know, if you want our kids to be socially active, let's get them socially active at a young age so that they're not trying to learn how to do it as grown men. They're actually being indoctrinated with it as they grow. They're actually learning how to serve by being served and serving others. It has to be a part of the pedagogy of how we're educating and nurturing them.
You know, Mr. Maybin, when I look around the city of Baltimore and look at 24th and Greenmount, when I look at Cecil Kirk, when I look at Easterwood Rec, when I look at Lillian Jones, we have a lot of money that has come through East and West Baltimore, but we don't have new rec centers. So I don't know if it's the athletes, if it's the public servants, but what I do know is we're failing these young people. I think it was you who reported that we had icicles on the classroom windows. You took a picture of it. Real big icicles.
Indeed.
This September, 11 schools were closed because they did not have air. Now, just last week, they reported sports betting generated $300 million. And as we know, the Maryland State Lottery has generated a good $20 to $30 billion. We have a new football stadium. We have a new baseball stadium. But the children can't go to school when it's too hot or too cold. Our priorities are whacked, Mr. Maybin. What do we do about it?
Change them. At the end of the day, we got to change them. And people have been talking about changing them for years. But again, I'm somebody that looks to lead with action. So yes, I'm going to talk about the fact that we don't have recreation centers and access to them in our most marginalized communities, but you're also talking to a brother that's opened one. I'm going to raise hell about our school system doing a piss poor job of educating our students and an even worse job of finding safe facilities for them to learn in, because I was actually in that system as an educator. And not just as an educator, I've created curricula that's still being taught in schools. You know what I mean? So in any area that you see me organizing in, I'm creating the changes that I'm talking about us needing. And I'm working and organizing with people that are doing the exact same thing. Everybody that I named earlier, from Brittany Young and the work that she's doing in the space of of engineering and mathematics, using dirt bike life and culture to appeal to our kids, to people like Erica Bridgeford and the amazing work that she's doing in our peace apartheid movement. You know what I mean? And the Baltimore peace movement and the Baltimore ceasefire. You know what I mean? I can keep on naming the work. Elijah Miles and the Tendea family and the amazing work that they're doing over there on the east side, on Green Mount, where you just talked about. You know, if we're going to talk about the blight, we have to talk about the people that are actually out here every day creating the changes, because, again, those changes ain't coming from these politicians that we complaining about. And we got to elect better and different people. And we're not going to even be able to do that if we're not politically organized. So that's what I'm saying. Anything that you throw at me, I'm going to take it in and I'm going to listen to it. But there are pragmatic ways that we have to go about addressing all of these issues. And at the end of the day, if we're going to waste all of this time complaining about the problems, we got to spend just as much time making sure we're organized in how we're addressing them. Because if we're going to talk about the schools, how are we getting the school board members up out of there? How are we replacing them with people that actually have an ear to the streets and are listening to what the community wants? If we're going to do that, then what does it look like to create a completely different curriculum? Who are the people that are already done that? I've already told you about my curriculum. There's about 5 other ones out there in different subject matters that we could take, workshop, build around to completely transform how we're educating our kids. Then there's a completely different conversation about the infrastructure of these school buildings and how we need to address that. That's going to be a combination of private, public, and corporate partnerships that it's going to take to do that, because we already know how big of a fiscal issue that's going to be in terms of addressing the whole thing, not just a Band-Aid here and there, but the entire system. Systemic issues are something that need to be addressed systemically, and you can't do that without organization. You can't do that without a united front, and that's part of what we're working on. Building around, especially with the events this weekend.
What are the events this weekend, Mr. Maybin?
Saturday from 12 to 4 p.m., 940 Madison Avenue. We're doing a peace walk and a day of service, a resource fair. Obviously, when everybody talks about the violence in Baltimore, usually they do so from a deficit-based perspective. They do it from a perspective that really doesn't center any solutions. It just really highlights our pain, which is understandable because our pain is immense, especially around issues like violence, intercommunal violence specifically. But what rarely happens is bringing resources to the table in the spaces where they're needed. You know what I mean? We're not addressing these people. We're talking about addressing the shooters, but then you bring them to a rally and all you do is preach at them. When at the end of the day, what they need is a job. They need a resource. They need an outlet. They need services. So what we've done is I've coalesced with the Brothers of the We Are Us movement and about 40 other grassroots organizations here in the Baltimore City. And we've come together and created a coalition where we're addressing this thing as a unified front. And in doing that, we're bringing out one of the largest gatherings of young people that Baltimore has seen in years. Over 1,000 in this spot specifically already committed to come out. We're bringing over 100 vendors and community organizations that service the city of Baltimore to the same location and making sure that all of their services that they're offering this day are completely free. And that's from the mental health services, the family services, educational services, returning citizens, conflict resolution, so many other things that I'm probably forgetting right now. But like I said, it's over 100 organizations. So it's a lot of different resources that we're bringing to the table. But the goal of all of this is not to put a Band-Aid on a shotgun wound, but to identify, to do a diagnostic on where the wounds are. You know what I mean? How many of them are there? And then who are the surgeons that we need to bring into the room in order to actually bring some healing to the situation. So with all of these resources, we want to connect dots between people that need services and the people that provide them and make sure that there's some kind of equity there in their access to them going forward. We have commitments from a lot of the organizations that are going to be coming that day, that they're going to continue relationships with people that are in need of different services that they provide, and find ways of making that equity possible going forward. So this Saturday from 12 to 4 p.m. be out there on Madison Avenue. Come out, bring your kids, bring your family, anybody that you know is in need of resources, or somebody that has ideas. We're bringing in student leaders from Oregon State University, Coppin State University, Bowie, University of Baltimore, middle school students, high school students. If you're a student leader, we want to come. We want to hear from you. We want to hear about your ideas about how we can transform this city for the better.
Okay. What haven't we talked about, Mr. Maybin? Anything else on your mind? They said you should run for office.
That's not my ministry, my brother. I'm a soldier and a servant. I do much more good work from outside of that system.
Cynthia Brooks is very grateful for your assistance with moving the Big Addy dinner. Serves over 50,000 people. Everybody's talking about Deion Sanders these days.
Yeah, we rapped about him the other day.
Well, we have a Aaron Maybin to brag about here in the city of Baltimore. We thank you for putting your bucket down where you stand and making a difference. Let me ask you, where's your recreation center near to? You're near a school, correct?
Yes, we're directly adjacent to Green Street Academy.
If I'm not mistaken, that's the same school where the gentleman who founded it ran for mayor, or the gentleman in charge of it, David Warnock.
Yes.
Tell me about that school. Is it a good partner? I would imagine so. It's just outside your window.
Absolutely. In keeping with this idea of independence and ownership, equity, control, community control, I think that our partnership in that community is a great example of what that looks like. Because Green Street Academy, most people don't know, is one of the only independent middle high schools in the city. And that's important because when we talk about a lot of the deficiencies with our school system, we have to look at who's in charge of it, who has the reins. That's why I said, if we're going to talk about the school system, we got to talk about the board. We got to talk about the people that are in charge of the money. We got to talk about the people that are in charge of the curriculum. We got to talk about all of the people that actually are the puppet masters of our kids' education. At Green Street Academy, they're independent middle high. So that curriculum, that schedule, all of that stuff is completely different than a lot of the other middle and high schools in the city of Baltimore. That's one thing. Secondly, because of the fact that they're an independent school, they had to build. You know what I mean? They had to create sustainability. They had to figure out how to bring in community partners such as myself and Tori to be a part of an ongoing relationship with the institution and with the students. Just last Friday, I spoke at the inauguration for their senior class. You know what I mean? So my apologies. I spoke at the inauguration for their senior class. And at the inauguration, one of the things that I was blown away by was the amount of excellence that was on display. They were highlighting some of the students there. They got, I think their top 10 students. Out of that top 10, I think all of them had like 4.4 GPAs, 4.5 GPAs, taking 5, 6 AP classes. You don't hear that talked about on the news. Let the news tell it. All of our students in the city are years behind in all of their classes. You don't talk about the kids that are already taking college level courses. You don't talk about the kids that have been achieving for years, that have been rewriting statistics and reconfiguring norms for years. So that's my thing. We can talk about the deficiencies because that's necessary in order to grow and move forward. But one thing that I'm always going to do is platform and highlight the greatness and excellence of our kids.
So that's Green Street Academy, just opposite. What's the name of your recreation center?
The Hilton Rec Center.
Hilton Rec Center. Baltimore and Hilton. Hadn't been in that neck of the woods in a minute. The recreation center looks beautiful. You have books in there.
Indeed, indeed.
What kind of books are in
Curated.
there?
All the banned books. No, but in all seriousness, that was a personal love project of mine. You know, obviously as an author myself, and as a lover of literature and books, that was functionally illiterate until I was in the 6th grade, mind you. I know how books and literature have transformed my life, and I know that, you know, a large part of who I am is because of the type of reader that I am. And
Was it a book that changed your life?
Say it again.
Was it a book that changed your life?
Oh man, there's so many. The first book, I'll give you this much. The first book that transformed my understanding of literature was The Coldest Winter Ever by Sister Soldier. Up until that point, I had gotten used to reading old white men write from a perspective of old white men. And as a young Black man, that never appealed to me. So I didn't think that I liked reading. I thought that I hated it. But when I was finally given Coldest Winter Ever to read, I was blown away because I had no idea that people could write like that. I didn't know that there were people out there that wrote in our colloquial language, you know what I'm saying, that wrote in the same way that we talked, you know what I'm saying, that had art, that had the same rhythm in their words on paper that I listened to when I put on rap, you know what I mean, that I felt when I walked through the city. And then after being exposed to Sister Soldier's work, then I was blessed to be able to find, you know, the Donald Goings of the world, the Iceberg Slims, and, you know, the James Baldwins, the Langston Hughes, the, you know, like Miri Baraka, you know, Leroy Glover, you know, these guys and women became my teachers. They became my mentors. They became my prayer warriors, you know. Toni Morrison, you know, I could go on and on, but I got a lot of my education, obviously, you know, in school, but I would say 80% of the education that I have at this point in my life that I actually use, I have gotten from books. So I realized one day that we needed the rec center to be a hub for literacy. We need the rec center to be a place where kids have access to books and have access to the books that they're intentionally trying to remove from our classrooms. There's a quote that when people start banning and burning books, Black people need to be running to read them. And I believe that, because the books that they're going to ban are always the books that humanize us, the books that challenge us, that demand almost that we be better, that our society become better. And I wanted to make sure that even if those books are being removed from the classroom, that they had a place where they could find them and they could take them and they could read them, they could use them, they could discuss them. So I went about curating a collection of over 1,000 books, you know, titles of all the books that have ever touched me in my life. But I also started reaching out in social media to all of my different collaborators and saying, what books changed your lives? You know what I mean? What are the books that transformed your relationship to understanding to read? Of course. I got about 20 copies of that in there, and we give them out all the time. There's certain books that I always just keep getting more of because I always give them away. You know what I mean? Like because there'll be certain kids that I know this book will speak to you where you are right now. Take this. Don't even bring it back. We'll get another one.
What's a typical afternoon look like at the recreation center in which you operate?
Our kids start trickling in for after school program about 2:30. They'll trickling in between 2:30 and about 5:30 when we start to close up shop. We have a math tutor there 4 days a week that we pay just to be there. so that any kid that needs help with homework, that needs tutoring, that needs to get caught up or taught how to do any kind of math problem, that they had time and space to really work with somebody one-on-one. So we have him there 4 days a week. We've done everything from boxing classes to yoga classes. We do architecture and design classes in our computer lab. You know what I mean? We have, I obviously have taught art activism classes, and, you know, we've done book club and all of that good stuff. And we have our camps, you know, but on a typical weekday, you know, from about 2:30 to 5:30, we're engaging, we're building, we're teaching. Kids are there doing homework. Kids are there doing their after school program. We have a football field out back that we have teams practicing on. We have a basketball court that we got a whole bunch of kids on. So on a day-to-day, we'll usually have about, you know, 100 kids or more on our campus every single day. And, you know, between outdoors and indoors, you know, we're engaging, you know, we're feeding them every single day. You know, every kid is getting, you know, snack and supper before they leave and go home. So for the kids that are food insecure, you know what I mean, that's a big resource that, you know, for nothing else, you know, that they know that they can get with us, you know. So
for me, the food desert.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, where we're located, you got a carry out, and then the closest grocery store you got to take a bus to. So, you know what I mean? For the kids that aren't eating every single day or aren't eating every night when they go home, sometimes the school is the only place that they're getting their meal. Now they know that they're going to get meals at school, but they're also going to be able to get another meal in the evening before they got to go in the house at night. And a lot of times, you know, if there's a little bit something extra or left over, especially if we're, you know, preparing hot meals and things like that, you know, they can take that home. You know, that's a daily service. You know what I mean? That definitely pays dividends.
What can we do to help you, Mr. Maybin?
Oh man, show up this weekend. You know, get active. Make sure that you're communicating with your council person, with your senator. Make sure that you're getting involved at whatever is going on in your neighborhood, your rec center, your community. If you don't have a rec center, let's figure out what we need to do to get one open. You know what I mean? We can work together and collaborate. At the end of the day, I tell people all the time, we lean on the community, you know, for volunteers and support, you know, building out the community library and things like that. But pretty much anything that I decide that we're going to build, it's going to get done, regardless of who's supporting. I think that we've shown that much so far. So I like trying to platform and highlight the other organizations in the city that are doing great work that can really use the support a whole lot more than we can. Mr.
Maybin, you let it be a happy hour. We support it with no problem. When it comes to knowing the members, the players on the Ravens, we know the players. What we don't know is the PTA meeting. What we don't know are our children's teachers. Now, I've heard you explain some of the challenges, but how do we fix that, Mr. Maybin?
Starts at home. That starts at home. At the end of the day, there should be no reason why you don't know your students, your kids' teachers. There should be no reason why we're not involved in their education process. If we know that the school is failing them, we can't fail them in the household as well. At some point, somebody got to take some responsibility. And if we're going to hold our schools responsible, you know what I mean? If we're going to make sure that we're talking to our politicians about that, we got to be on code and on point with how we move and operate. So that means that we got to be in a position where we have an actual agenda that we're fighting for. All right. We're not just complaining, but we're saying these are the changes that we want, that we're demanding, and we're demanding them not as individuals, but as a collective. Right. We got to also know we got to be intimately connected with the process of raising our kids. We can't be leaning on the school or the sports teams, the coaches, and people with rec centers like me. Like, I play a role, the teachers play a role, the coaches play a role, mentors play a role. The most important role is in the house, in the community. So how are we building an infrastructure around that? How are we supporting parents in that process? You know what I mean? Like I tell people that all the time, especially with the young parents that I counsel and mentor their kids and all of that kind of stuff. It's like, a lot of these parents, man, they're struggling. They need resources. They need a support system. And I'm not even talking about just financially. I'm talking about emotionally. You know what I mean? Like, spiritually. These are things that we're not addressing, and we're just acting like, we act like when the shooting occurs that this wasn't a foregone conclusion.
Like Brooklyn Park, like Brooklyn Homes.
Exactly.
28 shot, 2 killed.
Exactly. Brooklyn Homes, Morgan State, Bowie State.
You
know what I mean? Like these are events that's happening. And it's not just the college campuses. Like, we done seen shootouts at football games.
Dunbar.
You know what I mean? Community shootouts at playgrounds where kids play. That's what I say. Like, we need a new code. In our community, we've always dealt with certain things. Like, poverty is nothing new to us. You know what I mean? But poverty has been almost synonymous with Blackness since our existence in this country. Yes, we have Black people that have been able to scale that, break that glass ceiling and get generational wealth, but they are very few and far in between. For the most part, most of our parents and grandparents had to struggle, had to do more with less. But the community didn't always feel like this. The community didn't always look like this. We might not have had money, we might not have had riches, but what we had was enough. We had love, we had unity. You know what I mean? We had a communal understanding that we were all a part of one another's success. You know what I'm saying? Like you had the woman on the block that babysitted everybody's kids, and the lady that sold candy, and like, I could just go back, and we were a part of our collective struggle in a way that you don't necessarily see happening to the same extent today. And yes, that's by design. You know what I mean? The result of the crack era was a burning of the social safety net that existed, what little of one did exist in our community. But it also was a burning of the bridges that connected all of us. Because now you don't have people leaving their door open, you know what I'm saying, so the neighbors' kids next door can come in and out of their house anymore. You know what I'm saying? You don't have the kids on the corner helping the elders down the block take their groceries in the house because the elders down the block are now afraid of them. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have the big homies that are giving game to the little dudes that are running around the streets telling them, hey, don't do that. Hey, that elder, leave them alone. Hey, that baby, leave them alone. Don't do that over here. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a code that goes beyond public policy or legislation or religion or class or economic status. There's a code that binds all of us that we act like we can't recognize anymore sometimes. And we got to start moving with that kind of intention. We got to understand that regardless of the things that divide us, we have to coalesce around the areas where we're binded together.
Okay, I'm going to end off with the question that I ended off with the other day. I got to ask you about Neon Dion. I got to ask you about him. A lot of hoopla, a lot of haters. I'm actually proud. But anyway, that's my take on it. Your take on Deion Sanders.
Oh, I already told you. I gave you everything the other day. My take is simple. I think that he's one of the greatest athletes to ever play the game. I think that he's one of the greatest athletes to ever live, period. I think that as a Black man, he has been an amazing example of what it means to be a leader and a father, a present father that is willing to sacrifice and go above and beyond for his children and his family. I think that he does a great job of modeling what it looks like to be a man of God and not just an archetype of what white America thinks a man of God is supposed to look like, but a black man that's actually proud to be himself and proud to walk and talk different and proud to instill that in his kids and in his players. I also think that there was a missed opportunity for him to build at Jackson State. That's a selfish opinion, but as a black man that desperately wants to see our HBCUs grow, I think that he was a great example of a way that can happen. But I also think that he trailblazed a path that I think that you will see other former NFL players like Eddie George is doing walk through that path. I just think that there's only one prime. So when you lose a figure like that, from the HBCU culture, that's going to hurt. But I think that what he's ultimately going to do in Colorado is going to be amazing. It's already amazing when you look at the fact that this was basically a one-win team before he got there, and now they're out here competing with perennial powerhouses. That's a testament to his skill and talent as a recruiter and as a coach, but also to his impact on the game.
Now, I did ask you about Neon Deion the other day. What I didn't go into or ask you about was mental health. And I think that would be a great way to close this segment out. Sure. How do we, we always talk about doing the push-ups, doing the road work. What about our mental health?
If we're going to do the push-ups and we're going to do the road work and we're going to do, the diet and all of that kind of stuff, our mental health and emotional wellness is just as important, if not the most important factor of all of those things. You know what I mean? I think that in our community, a lot of us have grown up with a skewed perspective of mental health and emotional wellness, which is also by design. Anybody that's read Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome already knows where I'm going here, but Black people in this country, the descendants of chattel slavery in this country, endured the type of trauma and brutality that doesn't disappear and doesn't disappear when one generation passes away. We've already started to see studies around intergenerational trauma. You've seen studies of the Jewish community and how the Holocaust still today has a traumatizing effect on the descendants of that genocide. If we're going to acknowledge that, we have to acknowledge how the impacts and effects of slavery in America are still impacting the psyche of Black people, are still impacting the institutions that were built on the capital from enslavement. You know what I mean? And the mindset and the ideology of the people that justified it to themselves, to their children, to larger society. So if we're going to unpack that, there's no way to do so without encompassing some form of mental health. And something that I try to talk a lot about when we discuss these things is usually when people talk about mental health, they do so in a vacuum. They do so from an elitist perspective that says that either you can afford therapy or you can't. And in our community, that's a big barrier, right? We grow up financially not having access to a lot of the amenities that we look at as luxuries, right? And in doing so, I think that there's a tendency in our community to look at therapy as either a wealthy thing or something that is more so for white folks. You know what I mean? Like, there got to be something wrong with you. You got to be crazy. I got
several therapists, Mr. Maybin. Let me just tell you, several therapists.
Yes. Look, we all need someone in that space that we can talk to. And even if you're not talking to somebody that's like I say in my book, right? One of the things that I touch on when I talk about my mental health journey is when I started studying up on it, I realized that there are really only 3 ways that you're going to address your mental health, right? You're going to do so by actually talking to somebody and talking it out. You're going to do so medically, or you're going to do so by ignoring it, right? Those are really only 3. And even if you're ignoring it, you're usually self-medicating. You know what I mean? So you out there getting high, or you're getting drunk, or you're numbing yourself with some other form that isn't going to ultimately benefit you, right? But what we don't realize is when we stop ourselves from sharing what we're going through, we also stop ourselves from getting the help that we need. And
Or
we have a
giving
tendency.
somebody else some insight that could help them.
Indeed. But I'm talking from a purely selfish perspective here, because we got to help ourselves before we have to love on ourselves before we can love others. We have to help ourselves before we can help others. We have to heal ourselves before we can heal others. And as Black folks, that's part of our problem. We have I will want to help and heal everybody else and ignore myself, right? And then eventually when, my blood pressure is through the roof, and when, you having heart issues and this, that, and the third, you wonder, what happened? You happened. You know that you're dealing with something, and you just decide to keep on stuffing it down there. Just keep on swallowing it. Nah, you got to share that. You got to speak on it. You got to put words out there. You got to be self-reflective and understand, what are the roots of what I'm feeling? Yes, I'm feeling this thing, but why? Who triggered me? Was this intentional or unintentional? Is this myself, or is this someone else? These are questions that therapy and addressing your mental health through dialogue and conversation allow you to do. And even if you don't have access to a therapist, you got access to, we have to curate around ourselves.
Sometimes it comes from a complete stranger, Mr.
That's
Maybin.
what I'm saying. We have to curate around ourselves people that feed us intellectually, spiritually, and emotionally. So there's certain people,
you get more therapy from a stranger than the therapist or a person
if
you
you're
would
listening,
expect to know.
If you're listening, and I get a lot of mine from friends, family, you know what I mean, companions that I trust. And that's the thing, you have to be willing to trust someone. It's a hard thing for a lot of people in our community to do, because by design, again, we are socialized not to trust one another. We're socialized to
Yesterday's Million Man March, Willie Lynch comes to mind.
Absolutely. And that's by design. So if we know that, we have to be intentional about going against that impulse. We have to be intentional about making sure that I curate a group of black men and women around me that got some gray hair and got some life experience, that I can talk to about life, that I can talk to about love, that I can talk to about fatherhood, relationships, and everything else that really matters in life. You'll curate a circle of people around you that you can talk about sports, entertainment, everything. But who do you talk to about love? Who do you talk to about God? Who do you talk to about relationships? Who do you talk to about fatherhood, motherhood? These are things that, as I get older, that's where I need to spend more and more of my time developing. You know what I mean? Challenging myself, because at the end of the day, I can't call myself anybody's leader if I'm not my son's leader, my daughter's leader. You know what I mean? If I'm not a leader in my household with my lady, I can't say that I'm doing anything in community if I'm not first doing it in my home. You know what I mean? So that's why I say it starts at home. And that's not me trying to blame our people for our conditions. That's saying that regardless of what your conditions are, we have to address it from the inside out first. And it doesn't matter how much money you have. That's my thing. We have to stop tying our financial and economic status to our emotional well-being. You know what I mean? We act like we can't create a loving environment. You know what I'm saying? If we're struggling financially. It shouldn't matter what's
need,
going on.
Before we get out of here, because we've gone over, I need 3 albums, 3 artists from you that you love and adore. Three pieces of music.
New art, new albums.
Doesn't matter. 3 inspirational.
All right. I'll give you a couple different genres. New album. I'm gonna say Killer Mike's Michael is the best album that I've heard all year. It's a beautiful project, some grown man rap, brother talking some real growth and transformational stuff that I think that's a message that I want to hear more black men playing and listening to. Killer Mike. I'm gonna go Kendrick Lamar to Pimp a Butterfly. Beautiful, beautiful album. And what else? What's my third? Where I'm gonna go with my third? Let me see. That one's tough. All right. So third, I still gotta go Reasonable Doubt. I still gotta go Reasonable Doubt by Jay-Z. So 3 albums, 3 different eras, 3 time periods, 3 different vantage points on black masculinity that I think are very important for us to have.
If you mess up the bond money, I think that was in that album. Mr. Maybin, we thank you so much. You got to plug your book and your artwork before we get out of here.
Absolutely.
I'll give you the final word.
Sure. You can find my artwork by going to www.aaronmaybin.com. All of the artwork is available on there. You can reach out to me for any inquiries about original work, and I have a couple solo exhibitions coming up. You can follow me on social media at Aaron Maybin, hashtag Aaron Maybin Art, to get more information about my upcoming shows. And right now, my newest book that's out right now is Getting on Code. Based on really is very much aligned with the conversation that we just had. This conversation centers around what is the code that we in our community should be abiding by when dealing with one another, when trying to build. So each chapter is a different element of our community that I feel that we're out of code with one another. And in each chapter, I kind of talk about how I personally have operated in that space over the past decade doing this work here in Baltimore. And after each chapter, there are discussion questions for you guys not to just limit yourself to my understanding or perspective on these issues, but for you to have this conversation with your family, with your coworkers, with your faith leaders, all of that kind of stuff. What should be our household code? What should be our communal code? What should be our family code? What should be our church code, our school code? And again, I think that when we're able to start having those hard conversations and establishing a baseline in our community, now we have a starting point that we can build from, that we can organize around. So again, everything that I do, whether it's in the art space, whether it's in the philanthropy space, whether it's in the creative space, it's centered around a desire to see us grow, a desire to see our community rise, a desire to see us do it together. So with that being said, I appreciate the time. And I look forward to seeing you guys this weekend, Saturday, October 21st, from 12 to 4 p.m., 940 Madison Avenue.